My name is Emery Walsh. I am 35 years old, and this is my true story. This really happened to me, and it completely changed my life. I once trusted someone deeply, but what they did to me was so shocking, so terrifying that I'm still haunted by it. Today, I want you to know how betrayal can come from the people you look up to the most. What started as something small soon turned into a nightmare I never imagined. If you really want to know how it all happened, then stay with me till the very end, because my story will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and remember this story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries. It all began when I returned to my hometown after years away, finally taking a position as a high school literature teacher at the very same school I once attended. Walking into those old halls again felt surreal but also unsettling because not every memory. There was a good one. When I was a student, I had one teacher who left a mark on me, not the inspiring kind, but the terrifying kind. His name was Mr. Warren, and he wasn't like any teacher I had ever known. He wasn't cruel in the way that left bruises or harsh in the way that left scars, but in the quiet, unsettling way that made your stomach twist without knowing why. He had this stare, this long, unblinking stare that made you feel like he could see every dark thought you'd ever had. Back then, I convinced myself I was just paranoid, just another teenager with an overactive imagination, but deep down I always feared there was something wrong with him. The strange thing was Mr. Warren never seemed to age. When I was 16, he looked like he was in his mid-40s, and now, nearly 20 years later, when I stepped back into the school, he looked almost exactly the same. His hair was maybe a touch grayer, but his skin, his posture, his eyes unchanged, like time had no power over him. I remember thinking, how is that possible? My fellow teachers welcomed me warmly, yet when they mentioned that Mr. Warren was still around, still teaching, my blood ran cold. I tried to shake it off, to act normal, but the unease clung to me. That first week of teaching was strange. Every time I passed him in the halls, he gave me that same long, piercing look, almost like he remembered me, almost like he was waiting for something. Then one night, as I stayed late grading papers, I heard footsteps outside my classroom. When I peeked out, the halls were empty, but faint whispers echoed down the corridor. It sounded like chanting low and rhythmic, a language I didn't understand. Following the sound, I found the source. The old storage room near the library. The door was cracked open, and inside I saw Mr. Warren standing in front of a circle drawn on the floor with chalk candles flickering around him. His voice was deep, unnatural, vibrating the air. My breath caught, and I stumbled back, accidentally letting my shoe squeak on the linoleum. His head snapped up instantly, eyes burning in the dim light, but by the time I blinked, the candles were gone, the chalk circle erased, and the room looked perfectly normal. "Can I help you, Miss Walsh?" he asked, his voice smooth, polite, as if nothing had happened. My throat went dry. I muttered something about hearing a noise and rushed away, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed what I saw again and again. Had I imagined it? Was it stress, exhaustion, my overactive imagination resurfacing? But then strange things began to happen. Papers went missing from my desk, only to reappear with strange symbols scribbled in the margins. My classroom door would unlock itself in the middle of the night. The janitor swore he never touched it. Students began telling me they had nightmares after falling asleep in my class, all of them describing the same thing: being trapped in a dark room with candles, unable to scream, while a shadow watched them. And every time I saw Mr. Warren, he smiled at me like he knew something I didn't. It wasn't long before I realized he was watching me outside of school too. My apartment window looked down onto the street, and more than once past midnight, I saw a figure standing there, tall, still not moving for hours. The next morning, Emery Warren would greet me at school with a knowing look, like we shared some secret. I told myself it couldn't be him, but deep down I knew it was. One evening, determined to catch him, I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo of the figure outside, but when I checked the picture, the street was empty. The figure didn't appear. That was the moment I knew something far darker than I had ever imagined was happening. Mr. Warren wasn't just a teacher. He wasn't just a man. He was something else, and for some reason, he had chosen me. The real nightmare hadn't even begun yet. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every night, I told myself I was imagining things, that stress from teaching again was playing tricks on me, but deep down, my instincts screamed otherwise. Something was wrong with Emery Warren, something far beyond normal. The days blurred together, filled with unease. I tried to focus on my students, but every lesson felt like an act performed under watchful eyes. I couldn't see his classroom was directly across from mine, and often when I looked up mid-lecture, I'd find him standing in his doorway, arms folded, just staring, not at the students, not at the hall at me, and every time our eyes locked, I felt this chilling pull like gravity wasn't holding me anymore like he was. I stopped eating lunch in the teacher's lounge because he would sit near me quiet, watching as if waiting for me to speak. No one else seemed bothered. They all called him brilliant, dedicated, respected, but I knew what I saw, I knew what I felt. And then one Friday night, everything escalated. I stayed late again, determined to prepare next week's lesson plans. When the lights flickered across the hall, I told myself it was just faulty wiring, but then I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, coming closer. I froze, heart hammering. As the sound stopped right outside my door, I dared not move, dared not breathe, when suddenly the door creaked open just an inch. I grabbed my phone, shining the flashlight toward the door, but the hall was empty. Nobody there. Still, the air was thick, heavy, like someone was. I rushed out, determined to go home. But halfway down the hall, I noticed something strange. Every door leading to the classrooms was wide open, though. I'd seen the janitor lock them earlier. At the end of the hall, the library door was cracked open, a dim orange glow spilling out. My chest tightened against all sense. I crept toward it, peeking inside, and there he was again. Mr. Warren in the middle of the library, candles arranged in a perfect circle around him, books laid out on the floor like an altar. His lips moved rapidly, in a language I couldn't comprehend, guttural and unnatural, like his voice wasn't meant to come from a human throat. My phone trembled in my hand as I lifted it to record, but the second I pressed record, every candle went out at once, plunging the room into total darkness. A sound rose then, not from him, but from all around me, whispers, hundreds of voices, overlapping, speaking in unison. I stumbled back, slamming into a table, and the crash echoed through the library. That's when the whispers stopped. Silence, heavy, suffocating silence, and then a low chuckle. His chuckle. Ms. Walsh's voice came out of the dark, smooth and steady. I was hoping you'd join us. My blood ran cold. The candles flared back to life, blindingly bright, and he stood in the center of them, staring directly at me. A smile stretched across his face. His eyes glowed faintly yellowish, not human at all. I turned and ran, sprinting through the hallways, fumbling with my keys, finally bursting out the front doors into the night air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. My hands shook so badly I could barely start the engine. That night's sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his glowing stare, heard those whispers. When morning came, I swore I wouldn't go back. I considered quitting, packing up, leaving town again, but something inside me resisted. Why should I be the one to leave? He was the monster, not me, and I needed answers. Monday arrived, and I forced myself to return. My students noticed how pale and distracted I was, but I couldn't explain at lunch. I overheard a few of the older teachers talking about Warren. They said he'd been at the school longer than anyone remembered, that even when they were students decades ago, he was there looking the same. It's like he doesn't age, one teacher joked. My stomach twisted. They laughed, but I knew it wasn't a joke. He didn't age, he wasn't human. I started digging into the school's history, combing through old yearbooks in the library during my breaks, and what I found chilled me to the bone. Year after year, decade after decade, there he was. Mr. Warren, always the same face, the same stiff smile, the same piercing stare. 1965, 1978, 1992, 2005, never changing. He had been here for at least 60 years, maybe longer, but how? Why? I knew I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I tried confiding in another teacher, Mrs. Howard, one of the kindest women on staff, but when I mentioned Warren, her expression shifted strangely. Best not to talk about him, Emery, she whispered, glancing around nervously. Just do your job and don't get involved. The way she said it made my blood run colder than ever. That night when I left school, I noticed something taped to the windshield of my car. It was a single sheet of paper covered in those same strange symbols I had seen scribbled before. My name was written at the bottom in red ink, but it looked disturbingly like blood. My heart pounded as I stuffed it into my bag, scanning the parking lot, but it was empty. I drove home with my doors locked constantly, checking my mirrors. At 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of scratching at my apartment door. I froze in bed, listening. Scratch, long, deliberate strokes like fingernails dragging across wood. Then a low, whispering voice seeped through the door. Emery? My name spoken in that same chilling tone. I grabbed a kitchen knife and inched toward the door, my whole body trembling. The scratching stopped. Silence. I swung the door open. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but on the floor in front of my apartment was another piece of paper. This one had only one sentence written on it. You belong to me now. I slammed the door, locking every bolt, heart racing. That was the moment I realized Emery Warren wasn't just tormenting me. He was claiming me, and if I didn't find a way to stop him, I wouldn't survive this. Following week felt like a waking nightmare every time I stepped into the school. I felt his presence lurking behind every corner and every shadow. My students started noticing my unease. Whispering among themselves, their young faces showing concern I couldn't ease, but I had no choice. I had to keep teaching, to keep pretending everything was normal even as I felt the walls closing in. Every time I looked toward Warren's classroom, his door was open and he was there, always there, standing motionless, his eyes fixed on me. I began to wonder if anyone else could even see what I was seeing, or if I was trapped in some personal hell that no one else could comprehend. But my search for answers grew more desperate. I returned to the library one night, determined to dig deeper into the archives, and I stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to find. Behind the stacks hidden in a locked filing cabinet, I discovered a collection of old disciplinary reports and incident records dating back more than 50 years. The handwriting varied, the paper aged, but the stories were the same. Students who went missing without explanation, teachers who resigned suddenly and left town, staff who suffered breakdowns. Over and over, Warren's name appeared in subtle ways, listed as a supervising teacher, a witness, or simply present. I flipped through page after page, my stomach twisting tighter, until one particular record stopped me cold. A girl named Claire Donovan, age 16, vanished in 1984. Her locker had been found empty, her home untouched. The only note on the file was chillingly brief. Last seen leaving after class with Mr. Warren. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the file. Before I could process it, the lights above me flickered and buzzed, plunging me into semi-darkness. The air turned icy and I felt it again, the presence. Slowly I turned toward the end of the aisle, and there he stood, Warren, silent, smiling. His eyes glowed faintly even in the dim light, and I swear I could see shadows twisting unnaturally around him, clinging to him like smoke. My chest tightened as he stepped closer, but before I could scream, his voice slid through the darkness like oil. Curiosity, he said, his tone both calm and menacing. Can be dangerous. I stumbled back, clutching the files to my chest, but when I blinked, he was gone. Just gone. I rushed home, heart hammering, but when I emptied the files onto my kitchen table later, I found the pages blank, every single one, as if they had never contained a word. Panic set in. Was I losing my mind? But the fear in my gut told me otherwise. He was covering his tracks, erasing evidence, and somehow impossibly bending reality itself. That night, my dreams were consumed by whispers and shadows. I saw the missing students, their faces pale and hollow, their mouths open in silent screams, their hands reaching toward me. When I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, I realized they weren't dreams. My bedroom window was open, though I had locked it. And standing in the corner of the room was a figure I knew too well, Warren. His face barely visible in the dark, but his glowing eyes gave him away. I froze, unable to move, my breath caught in my throat. He raised one hand slowly, deliberately, and in the faint moonlight, I saw it wasn't a hand at all. It was a twisted claw, dark and sharp, shifting unnaturally. "You're already mine," he whispered, and before I could scream, he vanished, leaving the room colder than ice. I broke down, then clutching myself, sobbing into the silence, because I knew this wasn't just a haunting. He wasn't just some twisted man. He was something else entirely, something ancient. I tried confiding in Mrs. Howard again the next day, desperate for someone to believe me, but when I found her in the teacher's lounge, she avoided my gaze. "Stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Do you want to end up like the others?" I pressed her, begged her, but she shook her head violently. "You don't fight him, Emery. You survive by staying invisible. That's the only way." Her words rattled through me like a curse. Staying invisible wasn't an option anymore. Not when he was breaking into my home, creeping into my dreams, clawing at my very sanity. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop, and I finally made a choice. If no one in this town would help me, if everyone was too terrified or too blind to see the truth, then I would expose him myself. I typed out everything I'd seen, every piece of evidence I had, every horror I'd endured, and prepared to send it to every news outlet and blog I could find. But just as I hit send, the screen went black. Not just the laptop, every light in the apartment cut out, plunging me into darkness. My phone flickered and died in my hand, and then from the shadows behind me, I heard the faintest whisper, "You can't run from me." My blood froze. I spun around, but the apartment was empty. Still, I felt him there, watching, waiting. My entire body trembled as I realized the horrifying truth. This wasn't about running. This wasn't about survival. This was a game to him, and I was already losing. The night after my apartment went dark was the breaking point. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw Warren's glowing gaze and the clawed shadow hand reaching for me. The air in my home felt poisoned heavy with dread, as if something ancient and malignant had seeped into the walls. I kept replaying Mrs. Howard's warning. Do you want to end up like the others? And realized she knew more than she was willing to say. I couldn't let this cycle continue, not with me, not with my students, not with anyone else. I needed answers, and I needed them now, so at dawn I drove. Back to the school. It was Sunday, the building locked, but I knew where the janitor's spare keys were kept. The halls echoed unnaturally as I crept toward Warren's classroom, my heart hammering so loudly. I was sure it would drown out when I pushed open his door. A blast of cold air hit me, and what I saw nearly drove me to my knees. His classroom wasn't a classroom anymore. Desks and chairs were shoved aside, and in their place was a circle burned into the tile filled with strange, spiraling symbols I couldn't recognize. At the center of the circle lay objects: old worn textbooks, broken jewelry, a pair of small scuffed sneakers. My blood ran cold. These weren't objects, they were offerings, trophies, proof of every student who had disappeared. As I stared, the air shimmered and shadows began to coil like snakes around the circle, and then he appeared, Warren. Except it wasn't really him anymore. His body shifted unnaturally, his face distorting into something both human and monstrously wrong. His jaw unhinged wider than it should, his skin rippling with shadows crawling beneath, his eyes burned with an otherworldly light. He stepped toward me, and the circle flared with a red glow. You shouldn't have come here, he hissed, though his voice no longer sounded human. It was layered deep and guttural, echoing from something far older than this town. My legs wanted to buckle, my body screaming at me to run, but rage burned hotter than fear. What are you? I demanded. Though my voice shook, he smiled, or at least something like a smile stretched across his distorted face. A teacher, he whispered mockingly. Always a teacher, and they always learn. In the end, the shadows lashed out, clawing at the air, but I remembered the files, the ones that vanished. Warren could erase evidence, twist memories, bend reality, but he couldn't erase everything. Those offerings, they anchored him, they gave him power. If I destroyed them, maybe I could weaken him, fueled by desperation. I darted forward, snatching up the sneakers from the circle. The room trembled violently, and Warren roared, the sound shaking the walls. Shadows shot toward me like spears slicing into my skin, but I clutched the sneakers and hurled them into the fire alarm box, shattering the glass. The sprinklers erupted, drenching the room. The circle hissed as water soaked into the symbols, and Warren screamed, his form flickering in out like a dying projection. I grabbed more objects: bracelets, hairpins, notebooks, and threw them into the spreading water, stomping them underfoot. Every time I destroyed one, Warren shrieked, his body tearing apart, shadows unraveling. And no, he bellowed, his voice splitting into 100 echoing tones. You belong to me. He lunged, claws slicing through the air, and for a moment I thought I was finished. But I snatched the final object, a cracked old locket from the center of the circle. Inside was a faded photo of a girl, Claire Donovan, the one who vanished in 1984. My chest tightened, but I didn't hesitate. With a scream of my own, I hurled it against the tile, shattering it into pieces. The effect was instant. The entire room convulsed as the shadows tore free of Warren, ripping away like smoke in a violent storm. His body twisted, stretched, and collapsed inward, his monstrous face contorted in agony. And then, with one last deafening roar, he imploded into nothing. Silence. The circle burned out, leaving only scorched tile and the smell of smoke. I fell to my knees, gasping, trembling, drenched by the sprinklers, but alive. Alive. When I staggered out into the dawn, the world felt unreal, too bright, too normal. I wanted to believe it was over, but deep down I knew it wasn't. The missing students never returned. Their faces still haunted my dreams. And every so often when I'm walking home late at night, I feel a presence at my back, hear the faintest whisper in the wind, you can't run from me. Maybe I destroyed him. Maybe I only delayed him. Either way, I carry the burden now, the truth of what happened in that school, the truth no one will ever believe. My name is Emery Walsh. I'm 35 years old. And I will never stop looking over my shoulder, because the lesson isn't over. Not yet.